In this video, we're going to talk about anger and what the word has to say about anger. Then we're going to take a look at some examples so that we can put this into context, because counterfeit Christianity is not representing this correctly, and it's really doing damage to people. Proverbs 14:29, whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly. Okay, I want to point out here that we're talking about whoever is slow to anger and he who has a versus he who has a hasty temper. So we're not actually talking about the feeling of anger, we're talking about the expression of anger. I want you to remember as we read that God feels the feeling of anger. And so does that make anger evil? It couldn't possibly, because God is not evil. And there are in fact many examples of righteous people who felt anger and even exhibited their anger in the word. But the way in which we feel and exhibit our anger needs to be done correctly. Psalm 37:8, refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. Okay, fretting yourself would be akin to holding on to a resentment. We are called to move our hearts into forgiveness and to process through what it is we're feeling. And in order to move our hearts into forgiveness, you have to feel the feelings that you have. You can't just say, I forgive, therefore I am. I mean, this is really just stupid and shallow and superficial counterfeit nonsense that happens in counterfeit Christianity. It's not an example of righteousness. It is a total disconnect from the feelings that God has given you for information. Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Again, appropriate expression of anger. A harsh word stirs up anger. Yeah, you're going to get a reaction to a harsh word. We are called to have a spirit of self-control. God says, I have not given you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of sound mind, self-control, love. And so if we have God's spirit, we're going to have a spirit of self-control. Now, once we get through these scriptures, we're going to take a look at some examples, because you might look at the example of Jesus going through the temple courts. You know, he made a whip of cords and started going through the temple courts, flipping over tables. Would you look at that and would you say that that was an appropriate expression of anger? Well, you need the context, don't you? You need the context of why Jesus was angry. He was angry because of his zeal for the house of God. And yet other examples in scripture where Judas was stealing from the money bag, for example, did Jesus lose his cool? Did he lose his temper? What about when people were slinging insults at him and beating him and knocking his bones out of joint and all this other stuff? Did Jesus lose his temper? Totally different context, isn't it? What about when Peter said to Simon the sorcerer, after Simon the sorcerer, here he's been baptized and he has come to believe. Now he sees that through the laying on of hands, people are receiving the Holy Spirit and gifts, and he offers to pay for this gift of God. And Peter's response to him was pretty harsh. You have no share in this ministry because your heart isn't right with God. So repent of this wickedness of yours and ask God if perhaps the thought of your heart may be forgiven you. He was being pretty direct, wasn't he? Some might even say, oh, that's so insulting. But he was being honest, he was being truthful, and he was giving Simon, the sorcerer, an opportunity to hear the truth so that he could go and repent and be right with God. And in fact, he starts out by saying, may your money perish with you because you thought you could buy the gift of God with money. You have no part or share in this ministry because your heart is not right before God. Those are pretty strong words. May your money perish with you? Yikes. Is Peter right or not? We know Peter was absolutely right. So there has to be a reconciliation of the examples in Scripture with the commands in Scripture. And so to act like in counterfeit Christianity that anger is something to be repressed, anger is something to not feel at all, and to never express, and to not even acknowledge so that you can actually process, is an absolute lie. It's a total lie. It is a satanic lie that leads people, when you repress these feelings and you're not acknowledging, you have no opportunity to process and learn from the information that God has given you through the design he has given you, through the feelings he's given you in your design, so that you can then understand what he's raising up in you in order to build you, in order to teach you. You know, if you put your hand on a burner on the stove that's hot, your hand is probably going to sizzle and melt into that burner. It's a logical consequence in order to tell you don't do that. When you feel angry about injustice, about someone exploiting you or exploiting God, making a marketplace of God, a business of God, trying to capitalize on Him. If you don't feel any anger about that and you keep going to counterfeit Christianity and you just keep repressing whatever it is that you feel, you don't have the very information that you need in order to get you away from that. And it's a major problem in counterfeit Christianity that people don't feel angry about the way that people in counterfeit Christianity are exploiting and invoking the name of God in vain and in blasphemy. And so what happens when you confront them about these things? When you're righteously upset about it and you confront these things with people who are not in touch with their feelings and they refuse to see and they continue to want to live in ignorance, they start saying things, well, what I think is God, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think that it's okay to celebrate Christmas because I'm celebrating it to Christ. They're not bothered by the conflict in Scripture when God says, don't add to what I have commanded and don't remove from it. They're not bothered by these things at all. And it's troublesome. It's problematic. But see, we, on the other hand, feeling angry about that, have to be able to process our anger so that we can communicate effectively. Being right is not the criteria by which people should listen to you. Because you can be correct about a particular topic, but you can relay it and communicate it in a way that's going to totally put people off. And on the other hand, people who don't love truth are going to be put off no matter what. They're not going to want to hear the words that you have to say. If someone is abusing you, if they're harming you, if they're taking advantage of you, should you feel angry about that so that you then know that you need to get away from them? Yes, that would be a good idea. That is, in fact, why God gave you these feelings. You need that information. You need the information that a situation is not okay, that it does not set right with you, and so that when you come in contact with people who claim to love God and really don't, the Word has told you to dust your feet. How can you possibly know when it's time to dust your feet if you're not attuned to the feelings that you feel? If Jesus felt righteous anger, if Peter felt righteous anger, if Moses felt righteous anger that the people had set up that calf and were dancing around and engaging in revelry, and these are righteous men, one of those men being perfect, being the Son of God, there has to be a reconciliation of this concept, doesn't there? We have to be able to understand how the Word, which commands us not to be quick, hasty in our temper, how to fret not yourself, so don't hold on to resentment, not to speak a harsh word, etc., etc. We need to be able to understand what is the Word actually saying. The Word isn't telling us don't feel the feelings that God gave you. The very feelings that God and His Son have. The very feelings that His prophets had. You see in Ezekiel that Ezekiel goes in anger and the bitterness of his spirit as he's being shown what's going on in the third temple, as he's being called to be a watchman and to speak these words that the very people who are supposed to be able to understand the language that Ezekiel is speaking, because it is the language of God, because it is the truth of God, why is it that they won't listen? He goes in the anger and bitterness of his spirit. That's what the Word says. And so if Ezekiel was doing that, if Ezekiel was feeling this over the state of Israel, God's people, how in the world was he called to be God's prophet and watchman? And in fact, in that chapter, you see that he has eaten the scroll that God has told him to eat, which tastes sweet in his mouth because it's the words of God, but causes his spirit to become embittered towards these wicked and rebellious people. God is doing that. So there's something wrong with the way we've been understanding this, with the way counterfeit Christianity has been interpreting feelings in general. We had a situation recently in which we had come alongside someone to help them and talk with them about what was going on in their home. And someone else became very activated and triggered by what was going on with this person. And the words that were coming out of their mouth were really harsh. And it wasn't received well because it wasn't appropriate to the situation and it wasn't being expressed appropriately. When Proverbs 15:1 says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger," you can see in this situation that when we don't deal with our own feelings, we're not going to express what we want to say correctly. That yes, there is a requirement to process our own anger, but the only way you can process it is if you feel it. is if you acknowledge it. What Proverbs 15 is not saying is don't acknowledge your anger and don't feel your anger. And actually, the very opposite happens when you don't acknowledge or feel your anger, is that your anger ends up controlling you. Now you're acting outside of your integrity because you're completely disconnected from feeling what you need to feel in order to process it, be built, and heal. James 1:20, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Yeah, that's right. I mean, continuing to hold on to the anger of man is not going to produce the righteousness of God. So what is the anger of man versus the anger of God? Well, let's talk about the example that I used earlier. If people are blaspheming the name of God and using his name in vain, and they're leading people astray, and they really don't love him, but they keep invoking his name in this disgusting way, that should make you righteously angry. Like, you should feel righteous anger over the fact that they're doing this in God's name and they're profaning his name. On the other hand, someone cuts you off on the freeway and you continue to hold on to that anger, that's not producing the righteousness of God. Should you feel the anger? Yeah. If you don't feel the anger or you don't feel anything when someone's cutting you off on the freeway, you're not even going to slow down. You're just going to be foolish. You're not even going to react appropriately. Should you continue to hold on to that? No, you should process through your feelings about that, because nothing happens without the sovereign hand of God. So take it to him and sort it through with him. Maybe there's something he's building in you. Maybe he wants to talk to you about something. Maybe he's getting your attention. Always go back to him. And he's going to let you know if that's something that you should continue to feel angry about for a particular reason, or is it a message that he wants to build in you, and then once the lesson is learned, it goes away. You don't have all of that because God relents. Ephesians 4:26, in your anger do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. You should definitely make sure that your feelings of anger are not going to lead you into sin. But I can tell you one way that your feelings of anger will definitely lead you into sin is if you don't deal with them. If you don't acknowledge your feelings of anger, it will most definitely lead you into sin. Usually, it'll lead you into being passive aggressive, not acknowledging that you feel anything and just being like, what? What did I do? What did I say? We used to have someone in the body who would do this. Like, they would not respond to correction, and then they would go and dislike videos and do stuff like that, or challenge certain things that I was saying, like beyond normal challenging. Like, we would resolve, and I would explain to them, this is why this is true based on this, and this in scripture. And they would relentlessly bring it up and try to discredit me in these different ways. Why? Because they weren't dealing with their anger. They didn't deal with their feelings. They just acted like everything was okay. And then they would go and do these cowardly, petty behaviors and act like they hadn't done anything. What are some other ways that anger could make you sin? You could start gossiping. You can blow up on people. You know, the misunderstanding regarding anger is that people often think that only people who are outwardly angry, externally angry, like those who blow up on people, those are the only people who are angry. But there are actually quite a lot of people who are internally angry because they're not acknowledging their anger, and they behave in petty, passive-aggressive ways, taking hostages, creating factions, and even some very likable people who are actually quite shallow and superficial, who just don't relate with their feelings, and they have the identity of being the passive, happy-go-lucky person, but they never connect with anyone. They're absolutely dead. They don't take responsibility for anything. They don't confront themselves, and they won't confront you. Don't worry, they won't confront you because they don't acknowledge anything. They are totally unaccountable. And sometimes they can be kind of quote unquote pleasant people to be around until they're not. Until their passivity and their unaccountability starts affecting your life when you need them to be accountable in relationship. Someone was sharing with me the other day that they learned this from their mother. Like, their mother would say things like, I just don't understand why other people get angry. I just don't get angry. This was like a dumb idea of like my parents' generation and the generation before. Now everyone has swung to the opposite end of the continuum because they knew that was like the jig was up on that toxic positivity, and now everyone can't wait to be offended by everything and to be angry about everything, right? I mean, it's like when this doesn't work, then we go to the other extreme, and neither of them are really working for us. But that generation, their rule of thumb was pull yourself up by your bootstraps and don't feel anything. Well, that doesn't work very well because now you're just not living in reality. I remember that my grandmother used to do this. If I talked about anything that she perceived to be negative, she would just not respond. She wouldn't even acknowledge that I was speaking. It's crazy making because now we're not living in reality and no one can address anything. And there's always this giant elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. That creates a lot of problems for people. And so it shouldn't surprise you that she was a heavy drinker because you got to do something to keep you in that perpetual state of fantasy that nothing's wrong. And so what this person was telling me is that she learned that from her mom. She thought it was a good idea. She thought that maybe that was even Christian, just to not acknowledge the way that you feel. Well, you know what happens? Eventually, you blow up. You are passive, passive, passive. You're not connecting with people authentically because you're not connecting with yourself authentically. I mean, that has to be. And eventually, you blow up. And people blow up on you. And because you're not connected to your anger, a lot of times the anger that is in you starts being acted out by the person you're in a relationship with. And in that dynamic, usually the person who's not feeling their anger is like, whoa, what's going on? Oh my goodness, we just have this problem in our relationship. It's Bob's anger. And there's no clue that you're part of that problem. Proverbs 29:11. A fool gives vent to spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. I was having a conversation with someone earlier today because we'd been getting in these conversations that were going like 2 and 3 hours, and God really doesn't allow me to do that. And the thing that I realized in my journaling this morning is that we have a lot of similarity in our background, and we also have a common sort of wound. Someone both of us commonly know who betrayed each of us, who turned on us and attacked us when we were trying to be a friend and be honest with this person. And to be honest, we weren't really engaging in this person rarely came up in conversation, but I was trying to understand, why is it that I know that I'm not supposed to be engaging in conversations for this amount of time, but behaviorally I can't just make the decision to 15 minutes or however long. I answered the question, I'm out. And what I realized is that I was starting to, we're commanded to be busy in the Lord. Be busy, stay busy. Keep your hands strong. That's another way that he says that, right? We're supposed to be busy in the Lord. But remember that Paul says, you guys are not busy, you're being busybodies. If you find that you are talking about content and every time that you bring something up, you have to give the whole background story and stuff like that, what you're doing is actually giving vent to your spirit. These are details that are supposed to be taken up with you and God. They're not details that you need to provide to man so that they have the context and that way they can be on your side. Because really what's supposed to be happening is that we're supposed to be in constant communication with the Father through the Holy Spirit. And if we're doing that, then the communication that we will have with others is either going to be our testimony so that everything is done to build up the church and to benefit the church. Or maybe you're asking questions so that other person is sharing testimony with you. And now you go take that information and you go apply it in your relationship with God and in your covenant. But what was happening on our conversations is that we were having long conversations about content. It was taking a long time to get through that content in order to get to the meat and potatoes. And sometimes, and that becomes busybody-ish because now you're talking about people that you don't even know. Like, what business do I have talking about people that I don't even know or hearing those details about them? I'm here as a shepherd. The only thing I need to talk to people about is, all right, how can I help shepherd you so that you can experience healing and you can go back to God and do something appropriate with this? And so it's not that I was necessarily attempting to gossip, but when I'm in a position or when you are in a position where you're listening to that story and you just keep listening to it and you don't say anything, you're presenting a stumbling block to the other person to think that it is okay to keep venting their spirit. And it's not. It's not okay for me to do it, so it wouldn't be okay for anybody else. Anytime that you're sharing your story, if it's not being done to share testimony. Let me explain to you what testimony is. Testimony is not, oh, I went through this too, or let me tell you about what I went through. Testimony is what you brought to God, and God built something in you regarding that content, regarding that situation or experience, and now you have something to share with someone in order to lift them up, build them up, teach them, and share a word from God. But just sharing your experiences, even if they're similar to another person's experience, that is not what we are called to do. And people get really used to doing this because the damaging fake field of mental health has taught people to live in this kind of idolatrous dumping, giving vent to spirit because, if you vent it enough, sooner or later you're going to purge it out. That's not the truth. That is not reality. Only God heals. So only God is the one that you're going to be able to go to. Now, will you go to God and vent that way? Will you talk to him in the same way that you talk to a human being? No, you will not, because he's going to convict you. He's going to hold you accountable. And also, he knows your situation better than you do. And so the way that we go to God is to say, Lord, you know this situation. Here's how I'm feeling about it. You process through your feelings, then you bring it to God and you ask, you lay it bare before him. You know this situation better than I do. I did this today because I have a relationship with someone I love that's not been healed. It hasn't been healed for a while now. And so I went to him and I said, look, you know his heart and you know my heart better than any of us do. Is there something I'm missing here? Is there something I need to look at and I need to own up to? That's a very different way. You can't possibly do that with a human being because that's not a question you could ask a human being, is it? You're going to engage totally differently with a human being. These things need to be sorted through with God. Now, does that mean that you don't feel them? Of course not. If you don't feel them, how are you going to sort through them? But again, this has to do with appropriately expressing, knowing what is correct to express and share with others. What you share with others should always be used to build up or to ask for their testimony when you're feeling stuck so that you can be built up and you can live correctly in the covenant based on help from the rest of the body in given situations. Like I'm getting stuck on the work right here. What's your experience with that? That's perfectly good. That's right. God uses our testimonies and he's going to use others' testimonies to help you. And then he's going to build your testimony and he's going to use that to help others. But you have to understand the difference between testimony and just dumping your stuff. So when Proverbs 29:11 says a fool gives vent to spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back, it is not saying a wise man doesn't acknowledge it. What it's saying is you won't be venting. You'll hold it back and go do what you need to do appropriately with what it is that's going on. I mean, come on. We know we've been through some really heavy stuff in this life. We need a place to be able to process that, an outlet for that. Therapy is not the place. A BFF is not the place. A shepherd is not the place. God is the place. You go to personal accountability within your personal relationship, and then you go to God. And with regard to other people, if you don't have a testimony to share, keep your mouth quiet. If you need help, ask for someone's testimony. If they don't have a testimony to share, they should also keep quiet. So when you're responding to people, it should be, well, here's my experience with this. Here's what's written in the word. That's it. That's the only authority you have on which to speak. Your authority does not come from having been through a similar situation. That's not authority. Authority comes from God. Ecclesiastes 7:9. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the heart of fools. All right, well, as much as it's important for us to feel anger, it's also important for us to be level about it. And the only way for us to really be level about it is to be connected to God's Holy Spirit. Is this something that I should be concerned about? I feel angry about what they just said. Am I good right now to continue to try to understand what that is, or have I misunderstood? That's called having a spirit of self-control. Don't be quickly offended, right? What's going on right now with this particular generation? Quickly offended about everything, quickly triggered about everything. And by the way, when people are quickly triggered, it's an indication that things aren't working. Whatever we're teaching our kids is not working. Go have more therapy? No, I can tell you right now that part of what they're learning in therapy is not how to be more accountable. It's how to be more upset with people who did not meet their needs. How to blame everybody else, social justice issues, parents, everybody else is at fault. And indeed, you may have been through a lot of injustices, but that does not warrant you to behave like a turd later on. Because now this is the cross you bear. This is something you need to go figure out with God. It does not warrant us to go and attack everybody else or to say, no, those are my issues. They're off limits. You can't talk about them. You must tiptoe. You must, this is the fine print in the covenant in our relationship. You just can't do that. People are entitled to hurt your feelings. They're entitled to say things you don't like. They're entitled to, not tell the truth, not be fully honest. And you get to make decisions about how you're going to deal with that. Because ultimately, if people are doing things that are wrong, you have decisions to make too about whether or not to dust your feet. But you can't just make that decision without processing with God. When people are quick in their spirit to become angry, and the word says anger lodges in the heart of fools, you can't make an instantaneous decision about whether or not a situation is what you think it is. And so if you're using that restraint and you're going back to God and you're being honest about your feelings and you're processing through, clarity is going to come. But you don't have clarity in the moment, especially when in the moment you rise immediately to anger, and that's what you act on and that's what you hold on to. Anger has to be processed, or you're not going to have clarity. There are very few things that are so urgent that you need to talk about them right now in the moment. So give yourself permission to restrain your tongue, to step back, to go and process that individually, then with God, and then to come back to that person and say, hey, can we have a conversation about this? Here's what I'm understanding. And then you test the spirit in that other person. But you've also separated yourself to make sure that you're in the right standing. Is there something here that has triggered you that you really need to take the time to sort through before you go and try to process that on someone else? Or make them the culprit and the object of your anger? That's not okay. That's what the word is saying. Proverbs 19:11, good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. This is one you really need to sort through with God. And I think that it's just, it's so important to step back from situations and to sort through and have clarity on your own stuff, clarity with him. Overlooking an offense does not mean that you're not holding people accountable. I think that that is a huge misunderstanding, misconception in counterfeit Christianity. We forgive people of their debts, but we also hold them accountable. So I'm going to give you an example. I've given you these examples before. I had someone come and paint my house a few years ago. They did not use the right product. Like, for example, when they did the caulking around the windowsills and stuff like that, they didn't use the right caulking, something that was going to hold up to like the sunlight. That wasn't the only thing that they did. They didn't use primer. But here's the thing, like when I confronted them about it, they didn't do anything about it. They didn't make it right. No, I'm not going to work with a person like that again. And actually, I gave this person a lot. Like I gave them tons of clothes and my treadmill. I gave him all this stuff. And I think the only reason he kept coming back is because, TVs. The only reason he kept coming back, I think, is not because he was trying to do the right thing, but to see what else he could get from me. In fact, he was the benefactor of all of those shoes, the Jimmy Choos and I said, just take it, go give it to the poor, bring it, to Mexico. When you go on your trips, give it to people over there so that they can sell it. That was a really hard thing to do. I could have made some money on that stuff. And this man did not do the right thing. Am I going to work with him again? No, I'm not. Did I confront him about it and give him an opportunity to do the right thing? Yes, I most certainly did. And he did not do the right thing. So now I'm left with, I've got to work my heart into forgiving him, into forgiving the debt, and overlooking the offense, in part because I want to be forgiven too. I've done a lot of stupid things in my life. I've got a pretty incredible debt. It's a very upsetting thing. It's a very hard thing to do what I did, but it's required. And sometimes we have to suck it up. We have to suck up what people who choose to do evil things have done to affect us. What would it do if I got overly angry about it and started screaming at this guy? Am I going to force him to do the right thing? No, I've tested the spirit. I see that he has no interest in doing the right thing, so I dust my feet. He'll never get a recommendation from me. He'll never get business from me again, and God will deal with him on the rest. So it's not that I'm not saying anything about what it is that he's done. We are called to confront those who sin against us. But I'm not going to harangue him because he hasn't done the right thing, because I also believe in a God who is going to vindicate me, who is fair, who is just, and who is faithful to those who revere him. How is God going to forsake me when this is what he's told me to do? Proverbs 16:32, whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. Wow, that's a pretty profound proverb. I'm going to read it again. Whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. That's so God's heart, isn't it? Like, he loves the humble and small things. And we think in the world, like, the mighty and those who take a city, oh, those are the powerful. Those are the important people. But really, ruling your own spirit and doing what's right and conforming that spirit to God is more powerful than someone who has the power to, I don't know, cut these people off at their knees. That is more powerful to God. And I don't know about you, but I'm looking for eternal rewards, so I'm not going to sell out to what's here. I'm going to invest my spirit and my heart into what lies ahead in eternity. Proverbs 15:18, a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger quiets contention. Again, we're not talking about those who are just, who a lot of times the world sees them as peacemakers, because basically they're just saying, don't talk about it. I can't stand that. I'll tell you right now. Like, people who just don't want to talk about what's going on are behaving out of cowardice. They don't want to come towards the light. They don't want to be exposed. And a lot of the time, they enjoy this identity of not shaking anything up. Sometimes things need to be shaken up appropriately, directly, honestly, in order for there to be change. But you see what the word says. It says, who is slow to anger quiets contention. We don't want to use our anger for contention. When I talk about shaking things up, God shakes things up in order to let things settle into a new place, especially when you have a family that's been operating in a particular way and things need to change. He will often shake things up, like make a situation kind of blow up so that things settle into a different pattern and everyone is motivated to do their work. And this way, you can have a different pattern in your family life, in your relationships. Now, God can do that however he wants, but we need to do this in an appropriate manner, realizing that we're man and he's God, right? Like, we can't just go in there and be, think we're God and be like, I'm going to shake everything up. But it is important for us to come back and to be slow to anger and calmly let people know, look, I think that this is not going correctly. We're not doing this correctly, and this needs to change. How can we change this dynamic? If people are not interested in joining you in that, sometimes you have to change your dynamic. You're part of the relationship so that others will have to change. We do this with our kids, don't we? Like, that's a perfect example. When I stop taking care of what my child is supposed to take care of, they're going to have to do that thing. When I start giving my child consequences for their behavior, now they're going to be motivated to fall within the structure that I've outlined in the home, because they're not going to reap the benefits unless they do that. They're not going to be able to enjoy the privileges that they had previously when I wasn't holding them accountable. And the same thing goes for our spouses. You want to change your dynamic in your relationship with your spouse? Maybe you got in a relationship when you guys were not in Christ, and one of you is now a believer and the other is not. You want to change that dynamic? Stop giving the rewards of being close with you. Be honest with them and let them know what needs to happen in order for you to feel like you're close with them. And don't just say things like, I need you to not do these behaviors. Let them know what you need them to do. So, like, for example, spouses do this all the time. They say to each other, I don't want you doing this, but they don't tell them what they want them to do. I need you to stop berating me. I mean, if it sounds like a fair request, but you need to help them to understand what you want them to do instead. You may have been tolerating them berating you and throwing tantrums when they don't like what you're doing, and now they don't know how to behave with you. They don't know how to get what they want because you've been reinforcing that this whole time for your own reasons. If you haven't been saying anything, if you've just been sort of shrinking and letting them dominate or abuse you, sometimes people don't even know they're being abusive. They're just so used to being in that rut. Okay, so I talked about some different examples of anger. I talked about, the three examples of Jesus making a whip with the cords in his righteous anger, his zeal for the Lord, for the house of the Lord. Peter, when he rebuked Simon the sorcerer for offering to pay for God's gift. Moses, when he saw that the Israelites had set up the golden calf. Now let's talk about a couple of other examples that are in the opposite direction. Evil anger. Saul was trying to kill David. He was quick to anger. You remember how mad he got at that new moon feast? His son Jonathan wasn't even comfortable eating the meal because he was so upset about how his father was behaving regarding David. And it was clear to Jonathan that he wanted to kill David. And then remember the prophecy of Jacob to his sons when he said, Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their council. Let me not join their assembly. For they have killed men in their anger and hamstrung oxen as they pleased. Cursed be their anger, so fierce, and their fury so cruel. I will scatter them in Jacob and disperse them in Israel. So this is obviously an anger that the Lord is rebuking. I feel like the examples that I've given here should make clear that there is an anger that you need to go process for the information that God is raising in the design he has given you. He gave you the feelings of anger, but you need to process them correctly. You need to not be driven by anger and hot-temperedness as Simeon and Levi and Saul. But there are indeed some things that should be raising legitimate anger inside of you. But the only way to know what to do about that, and the only way to have clarity, is to acknowledge the way that you're feeling, pull yourself out of the situation, have restraint. The very worst thing that you can do with your children, and I know that us parents do it all the time, is to react in the moment to your children. The best thing that you can do is to step away and go and do your journaling and then come back and have a conversation with them. Let them know. You know what? I'm sorry, but I have to remove myself from this conversation right now because I don't want to say something that I shouldn't say. I need to go get clarity. I'm going to go write. I'm going to go into my God closet. Whatever it is, just have a pat response that allows you to get out of that conversation so that you can go and take that time to write, to be with God. I had a situation the other day where I did not take this advice. I did not take my own suggestion, and things started to get escalated between my daughter and I. But each of us do our own work, and then we come back, we have that conversation, and this is really few and far between. We've had some things that have happened recently that have made, have risen some very painful and challenging situations. But for the most part, it's not a thing in our relationship because we usually will step away, and usually in the moment we're able to get back to redirect and say, wait a minute, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to fight. So let me just take a moment to try to gather what it is that I'm feeling and to sort through it. Children, particularly teenagers, which of course my daughter is not. She's a grown woman. But teenagers in particular are going to try to get your goat. They've been with you for a while. They know your buttons. They know how to get what they want. They know your weak spots. And it's going to be really easy for things to escalate. And you won't even, you'll be fully convinced that you're right. But the way that you can change the dynamic with your children is to stop the conversation and go and write. Then come back and you'll be able to act within your integrity. You'll be able to act within the authority that God has given you with clarity and with God as your co-parent. And actually, even more than a co-parent, because really, he's the only one who has the ability to change your child and to change you. So he will actually do that work. And he'll testify when you're actually behaving in step with him. But if you step apart from him and you try to do your own thing, don't expect him to testify. The last thing that I want to say to you is that whether you are a person who tends to externalize anger and blow up on people or react, or you are a person who internalizes anger and tends to stuff it down and then you behave in these passive aggressive ways, or you're just totally disconnected from the way that you feel, both of those are the same reaction. They might look different, but they're the same reaction. Neither one is attuned to their own feelings. The person who's externalizing anger, you might think, oh, well, they're really attuned to their anger. They're not. They're out of control. They're shutting down and just reacting. They're not attuned to where they could really say like what it is that they're feeling. What would probably come out of their mouth is, you did blah, 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 blah. It's like content stuff. They're not going to tell you the feelings behind the anger with clarity. They're reacting. And the same thing is happening for the person who's internalizing anger. Just because you don't see what's going on does not mean that they're not angry. In fact, what I have tended to see and experience in people who internalize their anger and shut down is that there's no external representation of it, and so they can live in even deeper denial that they're even angry, that there's anything to process. Both are shut down from their feelings. One, I do believe, can be a little more dangerous than the other. And the interesting thing is people usually think that the one who's externalizing is more dangerous because it doesn't feel safe when they're doing it. But the one who's totally disconnected, they don't even have the opportunity to feel remorse because they're really not acting out anything in the obvious. It's usually the person who's externalizing their anger who's acting it out, and then they feel remorse later. And so that creates some sort of motivation for them to go and at least process it after the fact, even though they didn't behave right in the moment. Either way, you need to start becoming more attuned to the way that you're feeling. You need to be honest with yourself about the way that you're feeling, or there is no opportunity for growth. And the bottom line is that this is the design that God has given you. These are the feelings he's given you. This is information. It's part of the way that God is talking to you and raising in you what needs to happen in order for you to grow. It is impossible for you to fulfill your covenant if you won't even be connected to the things that you feel, because God's communicating through, to you through there. So essentially what you're doing is spurning him. You're spurning the information he's giving you and the ways that he's communicating with you. The same thing goes for you ignoring physical sensations and illnesses and things like that and going to the doctor and saying, oh, well, I don't have time to deal with what God's doing right now. I'm just going to go get a pill. How does that work? You think God's going to go away? He's going to send you something more significant. So yeah, it might be an inconvenience to you to be sick. It might be an inconvenience to you that God is raising circumstances and feelings and dreams and sensations and all of these other things. But I mean, this is the deal. Like, that's what we're here for. That's why we exist, is to have a relationship with him. But a lot of times we're treating life as though, these are inconveniences to us. What is it an inconvenience to? It's an inconvenience to you and the way that you want to live your life and the things that you want to go do, because that's not what we're here for. So I hope this makes sense. It's the most important thing that you're doing is having a relationship with God. In order to have a relationship with God, you got to have a relationship with yourself. In order to have a relationship with another human being, you're going to have a relationship with yourself. Please take these things that I've said to you and discern them with God.